Last week, Sunday, Kevin and I we flew our 9-year-old granddaughter to Universal Studios in California. We like to take each grandchild on a special trip, and so she's into Harry Potter, so she picked Universal Studios to go to Harry Potter World. And of course, we bought for her a wand. Hermione wand, and it comes with instructions on the way you flick your wrist and everything, and the words you have to use it's incredible. Of course, life doesn't work that way. It'd be nice if we could just wave a wand and fix everything, fix every problem, but it doesn't work that way. It works from the inside. Everything starts from within. Starts with us. Eric Butterworth tells the story of a man who was crippled, who was very successful in everything he did. And a reporter wanted to interview him, and so the reporter, asked him about this. How is it that you've been so successful? And he said, well, I don't give much attention to negative thoughts, and I just let things unfold, and I have a very positive outlook on life. And the reporter said, well, hasn't your handicap crippled or colored your outlook? And he said, yes, of course it's colored my outlook, and I love colors. Now, many of us would think that for this man to be free, he needs to not be crippled. But there are many people who are physically handicapped that are extremely successful, and there are many people who are physically very, very well who are mentally handicapped, mentally challenged. And so it's up to us to decide how we're going to live our life, how we're going to choose to be, how we're going to show up and meet any challenge that comes to us. Our founding fathers of this country Thomas Jefferson mostly wrote the Declaration of Independence. And in it, there's some words that you've all heard, and they're very famous, and I want to just read those. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, what beautiful words, right? I mean, I think I could probably speak for most of us that we want to live up to that. It's an ideal. And we've come a long way since 1776. But in 249 years, we're not quite there yet. The divine ideas in the Declaration of Independence, though, those words, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, those are divine ideas that we get to then take, and divine ideas are always filtered by our own personal beliefs and how we express them. The writers of the Declaration of Independence, when they said all men are created equal, didn't include women, didn't include people of color, didn't include indigenous people. They included white men. So we've got a long way to go yet. But I love that they talk about how unalienable rights, it means we are born with these rights. They're not given to us by other people. They're not given to us by the government. We are born with the right to a life. We are born with the right to liberty or freedom. We are born with the right to pursue happiness or to have a life worth living, which is a lot about what spiritual freedom is. Spiritual freedom is the ability to know that we are free with our thoughts, with our beliefs, with our attitudes, that we have the freedom to decide how we're going to show up, how we're going to be in the world. And a lot of times we think of freedom as in the Declaration of Independence, freedom from something. It was a freedom from Great Britain and from rule of the crown. But it was also a freedom, more importantly, a freedom to an ideal, a freedom to self-government, a freedom to be the kind of country we wanted to be. And so we think about freedom, and a lot of times we think about it as an escape from something that we'd rather not face. I'd like to be free of that mess, that challenge, that person, that situation in my life. But freedom, more importantly, and a better way to look at freedom is a freedom to be a certain way, a freedom to be more loving, more joyful, a freedom to express from our best selves, express from that place inside you, that divine place inside you. And we have people who are in our military who have defended these rights, these freedoms for us. Only about 6% of our population now are veterans. The number's been going down. But we thought, who better to share what freedom means than people who risk their lives defending freedom for us? So this morning we have Peter Farwell, who's a veteran. We have Beth Overstreet, who couldn't be here, but she wrote something up that I'll share with you, share for you. And we have Bill Holmes, who's also a veteran from the Marines, all three of them veterans. So it's an honor to have them here and to share their stories. So Peter, come on up, you're first.
Thank you. Do you know why there aren't any knock-knock jokes about freedom? Because freedom rings. All right, thank you. At the age of 18, instead of going to college or taking a gap year, I decided I needed to take a radical step and join the Marines. Ironically, in order to become a member of the armed forces and earn the right to protect the freedom of the United States and its citizens, it was necessary to agree to give up a large part of my own freedom to be part of the greater mission. Turns out it was more than my recruiter really let on. I soon found out the military establishment runs on a very authoritarian system. Why is that? Well, democracy is not a good model for group governance and decision-making when you're attacking a bunker with mortar rounds landing all around you. Marine boot camp is designed to indoctrinate young people in how to obey orders quickly and efficiently without question. The punishment for failure is, if in training, receive more training. But if you're in combat, the price you pay could be death of yourself or your fellow Marines. My point in relating this happy story about how Marines are made is to say, once a young person takes on the role of Marine, many aspects of his or her authentic life are likely to be buried. When people find out I served as a Marine, they say, "Thank you for your service." The time I served was only one aspect of my service. When I completed my 5 years of active duty, I also needed time and effort to find my way back to my authentic self, and the process continues. So what does freedom and authenticity have to do with each other? Do I feel free to be myself? In order to truly answer this question, I need to understand just who I am. If I am free to be me, I need to spend time with the authentic me and get to know him. And why does this matter? It matters because if I don't know who I am, I will attract others to me who also don't know who they are, and we will create an inauthentic experience together. So what? Well, it matters because now I know better. Creating authentic experiences is so much richer and more satisfying. I just don't want to waste my time being inauthentic. What does authenticity have to do with freedom anyway? Once I know who I am, I want to be free to seek out others who share my values. Being my authentic self is liberating. I'm going to share a slide now. There we go. Freedom and authenticity, concepts central to existentialist philosophy, are intertwined. Authenticity involves living in accordance with one's true self, embracing one's freedom to make choices and take responsibility for them, rather than conforming to external expectations or societal pressures. Existentialists like Sartre argue that humans are fundamentally free, and that authenticity is a choice to acknowledge and embrace this freedom, even amidst the anxieties it can provoke. And I thank Google AI for that bit of wisdom. Don't worry, I fact-checked it. Our most recent Columbine Men's Group meeting had us contemplating our shadow side, and I related that I had been raised in an alcoholic home, meaning there was a fair amount of dysfunctional behavior to overcome. As a middle child, I developed a stoic personality and tended to rely on people pleasing to avoid conflict. This worked well to placate my parents. However, with my friends, I was always my authentic feral self. Fast forward to my 20s as a young civilian navigating the world, trying to figure out what others wanted to hear depending on my assessment of the situation was exhausting. Trying to be liked by being who I thought others wanted to see just ended up with the opposite result. There's a reason my old friends were so precious. They knew the real me, the authentic me. During this time, I took an intense advanced awareness training that lasted 5 long days. Late on Saturday night, as part of the program, the facilitator was giving people new personas to try on when they came back to training the next morning. These personas were generally opposite of the participant's chosen role and appearance. For example, an impeccably dressed career woman was assigned to come back to the training dressed in grungy pajamas. The hippie dude was told to come back in a business suit. The facilitator got to me and paused. Peter, just be real. Why can't I just wear a suit, I thought. While I was sort of focused on what kind of clothing to wear, I spent a great deal of time contemplating what he meant. As adults, we all wear masks. Some of our masks are pretty elaborate. I needed to chip away at my inner people pleaser, my inner victim, my martyr, and all the other numbers I used to run, and have the courage to be real, to be authentic. That process was profoundly humbling and a bit terrifying. If I didn't really know who was I supposed to ask? So I made the choice to be a more loving man and see where that led. Then as now, I'm remembering to be more compassionate, more aware of what others are experiencing, and being about showing up with love to add value to a situation. That said, I can still be fuzzy on the whole authentic thing, but I am grateful I have the freedom to explore what it means to me. So I'll close with some wisdom from others versed in the topic of freedom. From Martin Luther King Jr. Freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. Nelson Mandela. Freedom is the right to choose one's beliefs, one's way of life, one's destiny. And from Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, the former Prime Minister of India. Freedom is not just about independence. It is about self-discovery and self-realization. So happy 4th of July, and may freedom reign.
Thank you, Peter. That was wonderful. Authenticity, freedom to be. So Beth Overstreet there's a prayer chaplain retreat this weekend, so she wasn't able to be here, but I wanted to include because she took the trouble of writing something up for us. She says she enlisted in the U.S. Air Force to pay for her education, and it was quite an adventure for her. She was the only woman of 60 men in her unit, and she worked as a jet engine mechanic on very big engines for the B-52 bombers and the KC-135s. She said she had to work twice as hard and be twice as good in order to get half the recognition that the men got. Most of them were really kind to her, really young, but the older men had a hard time with it. They didn't know that her father was a chief in the Navy and worked and served in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. And so she learned from her dad to be tough, to stand up for herself. She was conditioned that she would not be intimidated. And she said it had blessings in it, and it also got her in trouble a lot for her cheekiness and her stubbornness. But she talks about the freedoms that she believes that our military has sacrificed their lives for us, and these freedoms are what are important to her. Freedom to worship as she sees fit. She says it's an inalienable right to be able to worship, and she's so grateful to have this community where she can be a prayer chaplain and hold this sacred space for us all. Freedom to say what she wants. Speech is protected by the First Amendment. She said, as you can imagine, she doesn't always say what people expect her to say. But she said we owe it to each other to not judge, to let everybody have their say, to let everybody have their opinion. And the military has defended this right for all of us to have our own opinion. She said the right to bear arms. Of course, this is a polarizing topic. She medaled as a sharpshooter, but never picked up a gun again after military service. She instead trusts our police departments and our military to protect her and her community. The freedom to move. This is a freedom that she says we often take for granted in the United States, that we can move freely within the country. Some people are not able to do that in other countries. Freedom of the press, much like freedom of speech, the press allows stories to be shared and opinions to be shared. And she says, what a powerful tool. And then freedom to get an education, where everyone has the right to an education. And what a gift it was for her as a child. She was, for desegregation, she was bused into a black neighborhood and went to school in a black neighborhood where she learned about diversity and other cultures. And then she went on to receive a Master's of Science in Mechanical Engineering, specifically in thermodynamics. Smart cookie. But she ended with this, and I thought her quote was really important to share. A very poor little white girl from the South, raised to be barefoot and pregnant, raised to believe she did not matter, raised to defer to the rule of others, excelled in school despite all of these teachings, served in the military, became a certified master mechanic, and then got her bachelor's. I now live a life that few, less than 10% of the world, can imagine. The freedoms defended by our military have allowed me to have this life. I pray every day that we access the spirit within, that everyone finds a little willingness to allow and nurture these freedoms. I hope that individuals, our communities, states, and country will continue to value, to benefit from, and fight for the freedoms, the gifts, and the talents of the current and future generations. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah, that's Beth Overstreet, our prayer chaplain. And freedoms also help us. We can appreciate things more freely. And Bill's going to talk about some things, simple things that that he came to appreciate. Come on up, Bill.
I don't know why I should be nervous. I'm among friends. I love to hear Beth's version and Pete as well. Pete sometimes speaks with the voice of a sheep, but he has the heart of a lion. What is a veteran? Here's my favorite definition. A veteran, whether active duty, discharged, retired, or reserve, is someone who at one point in his or her life wrote a blank check made payable to the United States of America for an amount up to and including their life. I feel a little bit like Elizabeth Taylor's sixth husband on his wedding night. Many of you don't know who Elizabeth Taylor, you're not that old yet. But anyway, I know what to do and say, I'm just not sure how to make it interesting. A few of us have heard this story, but its lessons have stayed with me for many years. So for those who haven't, here goes. On December 5th, 1965, I boarded a transport to fly out of Da Nang, Vietnam to San Francisco, where I would be discharged from my 5-year obligation to the Marine Corps. During that 13-hour flight, I was seated next to a young black Army private first class, also headed to San Francisco for the same reason, to be discharged. Over that long flight, he detailed to me how his unit had been overwhelmed by the Viet Cong in a place called Dong Xoai. His unit had almost been decimated, and in combat, strong friendships are formed. He had spent 20 hours in his foxhole with his best buddy, who lay dead before they could be rescued. This young PFC had survived and was on his way home for what would be a different Christmas. On the approach to San Francisco, the pilot flipped his wings to the left, showing the passengers on the left side that beautiful sight, the Golden Gate Bridge, and repeated it on the right side. We were home. Wow. If you've traveled outside the United States, you know that when you get back to the U.S., it feels really good. Folks, that doesn't even compare from returning from a war zone. I saw tears forming in the private's eyes, and I put my arm around him, and I said, "Does that feel pretty good? Does that look pretty good to you, Private?" He said, "Yes, sir, Lieutenant." He said, "About 2 or 3 weeks ago, I never thought I was going to see this place again." After landing, we said goodbye, and I wished him a good Christmas. I knew it would be with mixed emotions, with the loss of his friend, and yet being home with his family. We both went our ways. But that's not the end of the story. After checking into a nice hotel, I unpacked, dressed in civilian clothes, and went down to a nice restaurant to have my first meal in the U.S. Before looking at the menu, I ordered 2 large glasses of whole milk. In Vietnam, we had limited amounts and mostly powdered stuff. I was sitting there luxuriating in the milk, wondering what I was going to order for dinner, and I listened to the couple at the table seating next to me. They were complaining about how their steak was done. From that, I took a huge lesson in gratitude, tolerance, privilege, all the blessings I had in life, and freedom. That huge lesson stayed with me and is still with me for the rest of my life. A young man named Robert Edsel worked for me many years ago as a college student and eventually became a New York Times bestseller author. He wrote The Monuments Men, which became a movie that George Clooney produced, which some of you have seen. He just finished a new book titled Remember Us, about Hitler's march through Holland, which was a country that wanted to stay neutral in World War II. Here is a quote in the prologue of his new book. Because how can you truly cherish priceless things, freedom, love, friendship, and even life itself, if you've never had them taken away? Very appropriate even now at our time. In closing, National Public Radio in 2021 ran an online contest. They said, finish the following sentence. I dream a world, ... Here was my entry. I dream a world where difference is not dehumanized, where ignorance and prejudice are replaced by education and enlightenment, where views different from mine have value, where old and new ways live in the same neighborhood, where fear and hate are replaced with faith and hope. I dream a world with no war. Thank you, thank you. I've been around a little while, and you know you're getting old when you go to an antique auction and they start bidding on you. I've been part of this very caring community for over 30 years, and a few of you have been my rock through some tough times and now some very good ones. I appreciate all of you. This may sound strange coming from an old Marine, but I love you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Beth, who's not here. And thanks to all of our veterans who have defended our freedoms for us. We're so grateful. So this week, as we're celebrating 4th of July on Friday, maybe spend a little time thinking about the freedoms that you have, the freedoms to be who you came here to be, and spend a little time in that, in gratitude. Namaste. Peace be with you.